Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2017 State of the Village Address. I am Sherry Latash, co-president of the League of Women Voters, along with Ann Yoshida. For many years, the League of Women Voters hosted a State of the Village dinner, an event organized to give citizens a chance to meet with their village president and to hear what he or she had to say about current issues, challenges, and successes in Glenview. We are honored and delighted to now co-host this forum with the Glenview Chamber of Commerce and the Glenview Values Project, and we are grateful to today's sponsor, Wintrust Community Banks. The League of Women Voters of the United States was formed nearly 100 years ago. With the foundation established by the National League, the Glenview League has engaged in nonpartisan political activity for more than 70 years. Perhaps best known for conducting candidate forums and registering voters, the League also has a long history of studying public policy issues and then adopting positions on those issues, which form the basis for our advocacy at the federal, state, county, and local levels. Those public policy positions are codified in this 100-page book entitled Impact on Issues. The League's work is also guided by core principles and concepts of government. Among other things, we believe that democratic, with a small d, government depends upon informed and active participation. And informed participation requires that governmental bodies protect the citizens' right to know by giving adequate notice of proposed actions, holding open meetings, and making public records available. We also believe that government should be responsive to the will of the people. The involvement of citizens is vital at every level of democracy, but none more so than on the local level, where our everyday lives are affected by the decisions of local government officials. League members in Glenview monitor the workings of local government by regularly observing meetings of Glenview boards and commissions. In addition, we advocate when issues on which we have a position come before the village board. The League welcomes efforts to make the workings of our government transparent and open to the citizens of this community. When adequately publicized, occasions like this one today offer residents the chance to ask questions and learn about the issues affecting our town. Today's event also provides a setting for Glenview officials and village staff to speak openly and in some detail about the challenges they face in meeting the needs of a diverse community. Meetings like this one can help chip away at cynicism and disengagement. Now more than ever, we need to seek opportunities where conversations may take place and questions may be asked, even challenging ones, in an atmosphere of civility and mutual respect. The League of Women Voters appreciates the opportunity to host a program like this one. I'd now like to introduce Jim Martin, President of the Glenview Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Lynn. It's been my privilege to serve as chairman of the board of directors for the Glenview Chamber of Commerce for the past 2 years. We are 500 plus business members and proud of that. If there are any other directors in the room, please stand and let us say hi to you. There you are. Thank you, boys and girls. Also here today are members of the Glenview Values Project. Jill Brickman and anybody else involved with that project, please stand. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our presenting sponsor today is Wintrust Bank. They are a network of community banks, as you know, and their local president is Mr. Jeff Richelicky, who's going to fill us in a little bit more. Jeff?
Morning, everybody. Everybody doing all right? Get some coffee back there from Glenview Grind. I'd like to thank the Glenview Chamber of Commerce, the League of Women Voters, and the Glenview Values Project for putting on this wonderful event and allowing Wintrust Community Banks to be the presenting sponsor today. I think the State of the Village address is one of the most meaningful events of the year, and I think it's one that provides each of us with a bit of a refreshed perspective on how substantial the business of running this fine village is, and how truly wonderful it is to live and work here. The job of public service is often a thankless one, but perhaps it is the love and respect for our community that drives so many of the great people who dedicate their time and energy in making Glenview great. To that end, I want to thank Village President Jim Patterson and his fellow trustees, as well as the various board and commission members who make this machine work. I also want to acknowledge recently installed village manager Matt Formica. Where's Matt? There. And the village staff for the great work that they do. As Jim mentioned, my name is Jeff Teleke, and I've lived and worked here in Glenview for most of my life. And as part of the Wintrust Community Banks, you may not know this, but we have 2 locations in town. Both happen to be on Waukegan Road. We've got one just south of Willow, known as Northview Bank and Trust, that opened in 1993. And we opened Glenview Bank and Trust in 2015, which is located right near the Marianos at Gulf Road. With that, I just want to introduce a couple of members of our team here real quickly. Back here, Doug Boersma. Raise your hand, Doug. Doug's our CEO. Doug is a Glenview guy, grew up here in town, product of District 34 and GBS and all that sort of stuff. Susie Zecca is next to him. Susie runs our retail platform and is a source of a lot of energy for our group. Mike Moylan is back here. Mike's our branch manager at Glenview Bank and Trust and has been an active member throughout the community since he started with us. So, just a couple of comments. I think there's a certain responsibility and maybe moral conscience that comes with being in the community bank business. Although we've been in the Glenview area for nearly 25 years, which seems odd to me since I've been here all that time, we didn't drop anchor down in Glenview at Glenview Bank and Trust with a false expectation that we just have to turn the lights on and open the doors and things will work. You kind of have to earn your way here in Glenview, and I think most of you know that, so we're doing our best to do that. I think there's a certain commitment required to demonstrate that our intent is genuine, and the exceptional people we have hired share this belief that one has to give back to the community. So in that spirit, we are actively involved in local service clubs, organizations, social service agencies, and schools. We provide financial support to many causes and events in Glenview, and we will continue to do so simply because it's the right thing to do. From a business perspective, we're a bank, okay. So we offer basically anything a family or business would need: competitive deposits, loan products, mortgages, wealth management services, but also loans for small businesses and larger family-owned businesses who have more substantial needs. So that's what we do. And despite the regulatory challenges that we face every day, we are in the business of lending money, and we do that. So, from a personal standpoint, it's a great pleasure for me to be active in a business I enjoy, in the community where my family and I live. So I have a great fondness for this village, and I'm pleased to participate as our presenting sponsor today. Before we move on to the program, I want to bring up Mike Moylan. Mike's our Glenview Bank and Trust branch manager. He's going to give a little plug for this Win with the Bear program through the chamber. So, thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and thank you everybody for coming out here. It's been a real pleasure to be in the Glenview community now for the last 3 years. One of my favorite things to do is this Shop Local campaign. Now, I saw a lot of you looking at this flyer in your seat, and I'm sure if you look at the back, you probably have found at least 5 stops that you have to stop at to try to win that prize, right? This is something that the Chamber and Wintrust and Glenview Bank and Trust have done now for 3 years, and we really want your support to promote it throughout the community. It's a Shop Local campaign, which helps the revenues for the village. It also helps these 65 businesses, and hopefully more next year, to grow and to have more customers and more clients coming in. How this program works is very simple. you're going to find this poster in 65 different windows throughout Glenview. The campaign starts on November 16th, so it's a little early for those that already started to fill out the front. And when you find that poster, you can go into that store and you're going to find a box like this, all right? Each one of these boxes will have a raffle ticket. You're going to fill out that raffle ticket, drop it in the box, and move on to your next location, which will be on one of these flyers. So you can pick up these flyers at that same store that you were just at, and then move over. Now, this campaign, every one of these individual businesses will be drawing, so there's 65 chances to win if you stop at every one. They will be drawing on December 18th, and they'll notify their winners. They typically would like you to come on in. They'll take some photos, and we'll get them up on the chamber website so we can promote your businesses even more in the community. So I think it's a great program. If there's any questions after this event, I'll be around. Just find me, and I can answer those questions. With that said, I'd like to introduce our village president, Jim Patterson.
Good morning. Jeff and Mike were incredibly thorough. By the way, the Shop Locally campaign is going to be on Saturday after Thanksgiving, I believe is the 25th. There will be a little parade through the downtown Glenview where we turn on the lights, and it's part of the Shop Local campaign kickoff for the official version. I'd like to Jeff thanked all kinds of people, so you were very thorough. I appreciate that. But I would also like to recognize we have an elected official here. We have Representative Robin Gable and Representative Laura Fine. So thank you both for joining us. And I see we have Alan Reuter from the library board here. And we also have Dave Dillon from the Park Board, I believe. And Jen Roberts from the Park Board. So it's nice to see all the elected officials that do come out and recognize our opportunity to present the village on an annual basis. With that, I'd like to just move forward here and give
Today,
you
Glenview's future is bright and our foundation is stronger than ever.
Welcome to Glenview.
Welcome to Glenview.
We love Glenview.
We love shopping in Glenview.
We love the downtown.
We love parade. We love cows.
Glenview is one of Chicago's premier suburbs with fine amenities and services, excellent schools, parks and playgrounds covering almost 850 acres, numerous options for shopping and dining, and proximity to local expressways and commuter trains. We're a vibrant, thriving community that manages growth with success and style.
To me, that's always a fun video to look at. It gives us a sense of what the community is really all about. This community is people, as with everything else, but our people have a tendency to do a variety of things really well. I would tell you that one of the things that they're extremely interested in is being well educated and making sure that their children and that others have the opportunity to be well educated. And I think when you look at some of these stats here, it says that we have 46,000 people over almost 14 square miles. That's just looking to see if you're paying attention. But there's almost, a little over 17,000, almost 18,000 housing units with an average age of 45. You can all see this. But I think one of the more interesting statistics up there that we don't really realize is that about a quarter of our community is open space. And so you're like, wow, that speaks to quality of life. And it says that there are a lot of jurisdictions here that are working together, and it gives you a sense of the value of the community. So then you say, well, what's the rest of it? So 50% is residential with a quarter, so about half of the residential space, the equivalent of half the residential space, is commercial and industrial. So why is that important? Because it gives us a sense of what's helping to pay the bills. The bills are an ongoing obligation, and so we're going to try to give you a couple of quick high-level snapshots of how and why this community works the way it does. The village government is really, there are 280 full-time staff. And I would tell you, when I go to a homeowners association meeting, the key is, if they don't know who I am or my name or any of that, I think that's a true compliment to what staff is doing, that there is customer service that is getting done, that business is being done efficiently, that people can come in and get through the process. There are 6 trustees and myself. We're elected, and our goal is to, I always tell our village staff that we're disposable. We're here to make a policy that makes sense, and that they need to put them in place. But our goal is to say, you know, what's the vision? And they help us with that, and we help them with that, and it's worked really well so far. So what does this say? That we have 132 million, and it gives you a sense of where it comes from. That primarily sales tax more than anything else. Property tax, we represent about 7% of the total property tax bill. So remember, I opened and I said that education's important. Well, those first 2 portions on the dollar bill there, on the left, those first 2 pieces are your school districts. And so the majority of the dollars that you spend on your property tax bill are going to the school districts to make sure that our future works really well. But from a village perspective, we have sales taxes and utility taxes and then other things, you know, but most importantly, if the streets work and the water shows up and the police and the fire show up, then we're really core services. That's our job, really simply stated. So where do we spend the money? Corporate funds are probably the single biggest portion, which is our public safety, first responders. They're critical, and we need to make sure that we have the appropriate amount. What is the right level of service? No one cares until they need them. And so it's trying to plan ahead so that you have the right people there when you need them. That your streets are plowed and snow goes away, that the water shows up, and probably the biggest structure is the capital improvement program. So what is that? That says that we have a program that we reinvest. We look at our streets and we say we believe that they survive about 60 years. If we pave them in 20, we pave them in 40, and we reconstruct them in 60. And so that's kind of a real simplified version of what's going on. We also try to make sure that when we're doing those streets, that we're trying to tear up and replace anything that might be a utility at the exact same time, so we don't have to tear up your street multiple times. So about every 5 years, 4 or 5 years, we have a company that we pay that drives every single street in the village. They look at those streets both structurally underneath as well as on the surface. They take a picture of the roadway and they say, it really looks junky, but underneath it's really good. Or it looks great, but underneath it's really bad. And the engineering department takes that into account to prioritize what do we really need to fix, and we fix worst first. The TIF funds are probably the most important thing that's going to come along in 2022 as that integrates into the village. Right now, why are we spending so much money there? Anybody know? It's called, Mr. Attia over there, he knows. It's called make-whole payments. And what that says is when we created a TIF, the state legislature, of which we have a couple here today, adjusted the statutes downstate to allow us to provide make-whole payments to the core jurisdictions so that when the TIF was structured, all the money would have gone into there and then paid for the roads. But let's say we had 100 kids there, the school district would have been subsidizing them for free. And what this says is we ask the school district, how much is your budget? What is an average student cost? And so then we pay the school district that amount of money. Let's say it's $15,000, just a round number, per student per year. We pay that to them, and that's why these TIF funds are a significant number. So that will roll into our budget, and when it comes into our budget, it should be seamless because all of a sudden each of the core jurisdictions will receive those funds directly. So from an operating expense, back here we said that we had 54 million, and here we say that about 42% is in first responders, public safety, and that 13% is public works, and 22% is how we manage and organize and make things work. That's a pretty high-level overview, but that's what this is all about, and we are available if you have more questions. This gives you a sense of a few more of the expenses. Community development, what is that all about? It's about planning. What should we have, where and when and why? And what is the right priority? General government, contractual service arrangements, different things. Special appropriations falls under the village board, which would be things like some senior service things and some other things like that. There are some groups that are critically important to the longevity of the community, whether you're looking at youth or seniors, and that's where the majority of these funds go. Maximizing efficiency. So what is the village board's obligation to the residents? I would tell you that the village board sees it as a significant fiduciary obligation that says, how do we provide the appropriate level of service for the most cost-effective means? And so sometimes we do things internally and sometimes we do things externally. We look at the various projects and we say, what is the cost if our staff does it from a fully loaded cost structure? And then we put it out to bid as well, and we say, what is the cost if it's done externally? And we've done both. And we've had projects that went outside, and we've had projects that have stayed inside. But we believe that we need to challenge ourselves. The term is managed competition in an effort to have continuous improvement. And so if you look at what's going on from a staff perspective, they continue to ask questions internally and externally to say, what is it that we can do better? And what level of service do our residents expect? Are they looking for more of something or less of something? And does it matter to them? So we have this thing called joint dispatch. So all of you have probably looked at your phone and gone on a trip somewhere and said, I want to go to someplace 200 miles away or 1,000 miles away. You can look at your phone, you can see the map, and you can get there. Or you can look at Google Maps, and you can see all kinds of things. So we have a joint dispatch. So we do dispatch here for Grays Lake. When they dial 911, it comes into our community. So we have a dispatch center that has become quite efficient, that knows and understands. We can look at the map and see where their responders are and what we're trying to do. By the way, about 3 years ago, I believe, the state made a law that said if you have a community less than 25,000 people, you need to consolidate dispatch with someone else. The reason for that is when you dial 911, it doesn't do you any good if the guy's in the bathroom. So there's a requirement that all 911, that there's a minimum of 2 people on staff around the clock, whether there's a service call or not, because you have to be human. And so realistically, as a result, they said, wait a second, there's a bunch of costs that we're paying for that doesn't need to be done. That is, and it was somewhat cost prohibitive. So little by little, we have now combined, what are we up to now, 9? 13. we actually do joint dispatch for 13 other communities. So we have responders in our police department that do really well, and it's kind of like, what is the best service that we can provide, and how and why, and how does that work for us? What does it do for us? We have some of the most modern equipment because we have a group of communities paying for it. So we have the very best in tools to get the job done. By the way, we have one of the few things that most of the state doesn't have. We actually have redundancy. So we have a separate center that is redundant of what we're doing in another town. It's actually in Highland Park, that works to our mutual benefit. If one goes down, we have a backup. And that is one of the first in the state, I believe. So public-private partnerships. So part of this is, how do we work with other communities in order to understand technology? IT is significant. I don't know if you understand, there's one of these terms called GIS, which is Geographic Information Services, and it's all of our tools that say, by the way, where is every single hydrant, where is every water main, where is every curb and gutter. And why is that important? Because when there's a bunch of snow and you're trying to figure out how do we fix something when there's a water leak, all of these maps that you have in your phone, that they have the ability, it's not available to everybody, but it is available to staff, and it gives them a sense of how and where they're going in a quick way to get things done. Infrastructure grant funding, we have been very successful in our management. A couple of years back said, how do we design a road? Is it going to change very much next year or the year after or the year after? Probably not. Let's design them a few years out. Let's get all of our engineering done as much as is feasible a few years in advance. By getting our engineering done in advance rather than waiting for it, we were always one of the very best at raising our hand and saying, you have shovel-ready projects? We're ready, here's our application. And so we have been very good at getting grants. And our staff has been on top of that for a while now, and so that's a true compliment to staff trying to make the most of the tools that are available to us. What's going on? So one of the most significant projects that, depending on where you live in town, has been Harlem Avenue reconstruction. So why did we do that? Well, they replaced 3 water mains with 1 new 12-inch water main. So I don't know if you know much about mechanics and fluid mechanics, but to have that one pipe is so much easier, especially when it's newer. I don't know what we're going to do in 60 years when it gets old, but for the moment, it's a significantly more efficient way of getting things done. Also replaced sidewalk, and probably more important to the pedestrians is that we upgraded the traffic signals. Some of the other things that have been done in 2017, if any of you go to our downtown area, you see that we have resurfaced roadway and with new parking stalls and some new street lights and some sidewalks. It's nicer, it's renovated, it's just kind of a different approach. Have any of you seen that? Yeah. You like it? I see a lot of nodding of the heads, so that's good. Glad to hear that you like it. We also have, if you live, and as with any other project, some projects are more sensitive to different parts of town. So there's an area that we call Bonnie Glen, and Bonnie Glen has had some streets that you could wade through depending on how much rain there was in certain, sometimes we have, the rain isn't even. Sometimes it all falls in one part of town for whatever reason, and sometimes it falls in another part. But in Bonnie Glen, you could get it up to your waist. And so this project, this was what I would refer to as interjurisdictional or multi-jurisdictional. By the way, I would take a moment to express a compliment to District 34 for working with the village to get this done in the interest of our mutual constituents. And at the same time, there are different things over the years where you've seen the Park District work with the village. And so each of these jurisdictions are doing things like Today, the library is offering this space. But in this particular case, a foot of water over an acre is considered an acre foot. And so this detention facility that was built is able to capture 5 acre feet of water. So the object is not necessarily to hold it, but to temporarily hold it so that it has a place to go to run off when there's a big deluge, that it has a place to go, and then it still siphons off in the normal routine. So it's this gigantic drain coming into it with a smaller drain going out so that it can just flow out over time. So this was at Lyon School, and you can see it was a big, long, and that yellow box gives you a sense of how long it was. And the parking lot was reconstructed and a variety of other things, but it works out really well. This gives you a sense of, remember we talked about reconstruction, and this is some of the roadways that have been reconstructed in this past year of 2017, including a new water main, including storm and sanitary, so as well as curb and gutter. So it kind of worked out really well. And my recollection is I think that was an SSA, was that? So, which said that those residents requested a curb and gutter, and I don't know if you're following that, but an SSA says that that they have voted to put in a curb and gutter, and they will share in the cost of curb and gutter because they wanted it. And so there was a way to do all of this at once. The timing was such that their SSA, their new utilities, and their road reconstruction all happened at once. Also, you say, okay, that was one little project. What else did we do? 2.2 miles were reconstructed out of the community, and then another 4.7 miles were resurfaced or patched. So we have something called, we have some regular scheduled resurfacing, and we also have MARS, minor area resurfacing. And MARS is an opportunity to say, you know what, it's not in the plan, but we really need to apply something over here. This is just horrible. And so you can, any resident can call in and say, I think there's a pothole you need to know about, or this street, would you please give this some consideration? And then staff looks at it relative to everything else and ranks it. And then we did some water and sanitary improvements. But probably more important in a different way, this isn't quite as tangible, but it does make a difference longer term, is the amount of time and effort that went into the comprehensive plan. So, which is done ideally about every 10 years. It isn't necessarily 10. You say, well, why? What would have happened? We actually did a few other projects in the previous, but between the last comprehensive plan, we did a couple of areas that we were specific to, such as either a downtown plan or a Milwaukee Avenue corridor plan or a Waukegan corridor plan. And so we've done different things where we thought areas needed more attention. And then this was an overview, and there were 5 sub areas that are still under development review, but gives you some sense of what's going on. And this is so when you establish this and you put it out here, it gives you some basis for where the community might go and how we might develop certain areas in the future. So if you're curious, it's probably something you might want to page through. Some other major developments in 2017, I think you're depending on where you live in town, you're probably more aware or less aware of some of these, but the Enclave was 44 single-family homes over off of Milwaukee Avenue, and then 600 Milwaukee Avenue is a project that's probably been underway for 10 years. It's been a problem. So you know, that group, the original group that invested, happened to pick a time that the economy didn't do well shortly thereafter, and so then someone else picked it up, and that didn't work real well, and then someone else picked it up, and you've seen it all these years, and we're confident that it's actually moving forward at this point. Emerald Place. So Anthem is a company that provides memory care, and it is something that's real that we have to figure out how to address, and They chose this site, which is actually a fairly quiet site. Chestnut is busy, but it's across from Valley Low and near the General Pension Board, who changed their name to Westpath. Thank you. In any case, that is coming to life. You can see it's actually a very nice looking building. And then if you went just west of the railroad tracks on Chestnut, on the north side at Lehigh and Chestnut, you'll see the Kensington School, a daycare and preschool. I'm amazed at how many of these we have, but there are a lot of them. And then Park Place, which is the old Village Hall site, 1225 Waukegan Road. You probably recognize that address, or at least I do. And so that'll be 26 units, and that's actually part of the downtown area. And if I could, I would ask our new village manager, Mr. Matt Formica, to please stand. He happens to be here this morning. So congratulations. We're happy to have Matt. He's got some gigantic shoes to fill, but I think he's done really well so far. And he's had a great relationship with the board, and that's the side that I see. So the staff side I think has done really well. And as a matter of fact, if we have our new deputy chief, Ms. Kathy Sostak. So with a new manager, we have a new promotion, and so that's kind of nice to have. And how many years have you been here, Kathy? 18 years. So she knows and understands the community and has a sense of the department. And I think when you put some of those things together, this was a decision by both the chief, the police chief, Chief Fitzpatrick, as well as the manager. And so that gives you some sense of taking their time to do things and be thorough. As Jeff Tellicky said early on, so much of this community is based on the people and the habits, and how there's a significant amount of tenure here. And so that's not taken for granted. Some other accomplishments in 2017 is a special census. So why did we take the time to do that? Because there are monies that come from the state that are a function of the per capita. So if we have 45,000 versus 46,000, if we have more people, there are more funds available. And it is meant to be an equitable distribution around the state as a function of what your population is. So when we have significant increase in residents, we want to try to capture that to make sure that, back to our fiduciary obligation, that we are capturing the appropriate amount of funds. And so it cost us $100,000 to do this. And you're like, are you serious? But we believe that we're going to get $300,000 back, because that gives you a sense of that we looked into it to say, is this worthwhile? And if so, how worthwhile? And you've also seen some things. A year ago, we put in new water meters. We went system-wide, and we put all new water meters everywhere that are very good at calculating exactly what's going through it. And so then we took that information, and our intent is to share that with all of you, so that you can look at your meter and you can say, wait a minute, my faucets have all been off for a day. Why is the water meter turning? Or they've been off for longer. What's going on? Do I have a leak somewhere? Is there some facility that we should replace a valve in, or something like that? And so you have the ability to look at your own, and you also have the ability, if you want, to maybe conserve. But these are all personal choices. We simply want to provide you with as much information as possible so that you can be informed.
Not every village has a bear, especially a bear that's 100 years old. Our Glenview bear is a statue, an icon, a symbol, and a motto. On special occasions, it's even been dressed up and decorated. It stood near the historical crossroads of this village, watching Glenview grow and develop into the wonderful place it is today.
The bear was linked with Glenview from the moment this statue was dedicated. The bear statue came to symbolize the generosity of the community, and the village credo became Hug the Bear.
The mission of every day is to appreciate the gentleness and strength of that unseen hand, which grades the highways and the pitfalls to our frail endurance and guides our stumbling steps to paths of truth. Happy children of Glenview, happy children of everywhere, you have pure fountains in your hearts.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Jacqueline Bear. Happy birthday to you.
That's kind of cool. You know, I look at some of the things that we do as a community, and that's just heartwarming. I see the Park District got involved. I don't know if you know, but the fountain was actually rebuilt by an organization called the Glenview Park Foundation. The village was involved. It gives you a sense of people just pulling together and speaks to our roots and where we're headed. And I think that's just kind of neat. It was kind of fun. I was really glad that Lynn included that. That was nice. So this gives you a sense of 2018. What do we want to do? Well, we believe that our budget is in structural balance. That it is, and so there's a couple of different things there. You say, well, what does that mean? It means that we spent everything that we're going to get. Is that good? Well, we can adjust those numbers. And so if we have more money, we'll put it into our capital projects. If we have less money, we will extend our capital projects and we'll try to make them last a little longer. We'll reprioritize. So in this particular case, it says that we're going to put $14 million, which is, we would like to, in a perfect world, staff would like to put more money into our capital projects. Why? Because we don't know that our roads really last 20 years between paving. So they will make the decisions and adjust to whatever we have. And that's really what this says. At the exact same time, with all due respect to our state legislators here, there is something called LGDF, Local Government Distributive Funds. LGDF is critical for a couple of reasons. Right now, remember we went back and we said, why did we do our census? Well, we get about $98 per cap. So if we have 46,000 people at $98 a piece, that's about 4.6 million bucks, round numbers. It's not quite, but it's close. And so out of that, there are different things that are going away. So 431,000 was diverted out of that 4.6 million, meaning it didn't come to us. We thought we were going to get it. So we still want to capture every resident. We want to know and understand what the opportunity is to capture dollars. We also understand the state has other perspectives. And so we look to balance that and say, what are we going to do in order to manage our own fiscal obligations based on what's happening? But LGDF is a term that you'll hear again and again. At least it's kind of a board and staff term, but that's what it means to us. So what do we have planned? We plan to reconstruct 1.5 miles. We plan to pave 6.3 miles. And then there are some other things, that a shared use path, of which there's a grant. So this 1.3 million, 80% of that we expect to get grants. And then there are different projects that The last one is probably an intriguing one because there are two different, there's a budget for the village and we have a separate budget temporarily that is associated with the Glen, and so for the TIF. And so our intention is, if you think about this, in a couple of years, all of those roads will become the property of the village. And so do you want to hand them over to the village in good shape or not? And it's kind of like who gets the bill. You getting the bill today or you getting the bill later? And the planning has been done that these roads, some of them, the main stem roads in particular, since they were originally built, have actually been used quite heavily for construction to rebuild the balance of the Glen. And so we felt that it's prudent to resurface the main stem roads so that when we get to 2022, that they'll come across in good shape. Just that gives you a little bit of perspective of how far out the staff is thinking as far as planning and incorporation for seamless handover. And so you're all familiar with the BEST site. Well, the village bought that last year, and we are listening to what potential builders might want to put there. We have not concluded anything yet. We're still accepting bids and considerations for what might go there. There's also some new plans for just west of Wendy's on the north side. There's an office building there, and they would like to put assisted living and memory care there. And then where Maddie's was on Waukegan Road, basically at the end of Chestnut at Waukegan, there's a Culver's that's planned for there. And then the Western Golf Association today is in the Village of Golf, and they plan to move into the Glen, as well as the Fertility Centers of Illinois, and there's a consideration for active senior apartments, which are down close to McDonald's on Waukegan Road. This gives you some of the considerations. Now, depending on where you live in town, this next one is almost more important. This is a long-range, far-reaching potential risk. And I say it like that because there's two different schools of thought. There's a school of thought that many urban developers have promoted for a number of years called TOD, or Transit-Oriented Development. And I would tell you that this is completely inconsistent with transit-oriented development. We are doing everything we can at both the state, federal, we're trying everything we can think of to prevent more freight trains from coming through Glenview. But part of this plan is there's a IDOT and a WISDOT plan to incorporate another rail. They would like to build a third track and store a train that is 10,000 feet or 2 miles long, let it sit there, park it there for some period of time while other passenger trains can go through. In my own opinion, I believe the freight should be routed around our area rather than through our area. And that is a project that is way bigger than any of us, because that would be billions of dollars from a federal level. I don't know how many people truly understand this in our community. If you live near it, you probably understand it because you've been very tuned into it, but I don't know that the rest of the community truly comprehends what's being proposed. And railroad things take years and years to put in place, and this has been, they've been working on this for a while, and they intend to continue, and we're trying to get what is called an environmental study, and they want to provide an environmental study for passenger. We would like an environmental study for freight. So how this is positioned is two different ways, and we're trying to get them to recognize that, you know, people move here for TOD. They didn't move here for freight. And when you hear someone say, well, they're near the freight, they're near the train lines, they should expect it. And then you have to say, wait a minute, this is at odds. When they moved here for for transportation based on your TOD plans. They didn't move here with any expectations of freight, and freight has increased significantly in the last number of years, in particular on our tracks. So, what should you do to keep up with the village? Well, there's a variety of different things you can do. One of them is simply go to our website. Another is sign up for our weekly newsletter. Simply go to the website and register there. But just put in an email address and it'll come out on autopilot. It'll be delivered to you each week. You'll learn little things. It's kind of neat. You can also go to Twitter. You can go to Facebook. Next door, there is a mobile app. The other thing that isn't actually on there, but I would call to your attention, is you all know what 911 is. Well, there's also something called reverse 911. And what that is that says there's something going on. I don't know, maybe boil your water, or maybe some other challenge, streets are blocked, or something else in a particular area, and they will call your area if you register for reverse 911 and if there's an issue in your area. So I would encourage you to look at the website and sign up for that, because more and more people don't even have a landline. And so we wouldn't know your cell number. So if we were going to capture your house and you didn't have a landline anymore, they wouldn't even know how to find you necessarily. So make yourself available. It's not public. This is all simply how we can get in touch with you. So there's no risk that we're not turning this over to anyone else. We have no obligations to do that. This is simply for our system for you. And with that, I'll give you a picture of our other board members. Phil White he is almost here every year, and he wrote me last night and said he was unable to make it today. Kareem Koja is new to the board. He just came on this past April. Debbie Carton, she's been here for, this is her 4th term. And Mike Jenny, I think it's he's in the middle of his 3rd. John Hinkamp, his 2nd, and Trustee Scott Britton, I believe this is his 3rd, and it's my 2nd term as president. And I was elected in 2013 as president, and I finish in 2021. And with that, I will ask if there are any questions. Yes, sir.
One, congratulations for the long-term great job on behalf of everybody.
Congratulations to the staff and to the community. Thank you.
Police.
Yes?
Fire, schools. I've always been a little mystified, and I think part of it's the Illinois government structure that we have. If you view it from a village of Glenview, we've got the village structure, multiple school districts, park district, and a mosquito abatement group. How does all of this come together as a broad vision for the village and get appropriately coordinated?
I guess there's a couple of ways to answer that, but I guess I would start. The state legislature has many years back, they made decisions that said that we have a lot of government jurisdictions. And I don't completely understand it, but I think it was a sense of they felt that if one group had too much power, it would be inefficient, and I think it's turned out to work the opposite. But that was an approach. We try to coordinate with all those different jurisdictions. We actually overlap with 9 school districts. We overlap with the park district, the library, as you mentioned, and mosquito abatement. We have a couple of different mosquito abatement areas. There's not one. You would think it would be, but they have different areas. We have a couple of different townships that we cover. I think 3 townships that we overlap with. 4. Thank you. And but the state legislature has recognized that. They actually put in a change in the law that said that some jurisdictions can vote to terminate, and the Evanston Township and the City of Evanston are actually coterminous, and they voted to disband that township. So there's one less government jurisdiction. Is that all correct? Just wanted to check. But that gives you a little bit of a sense of how, and so we try to work with them, but everybody has their own elected board and their own staff, and it doesn't always work. But we work hard at that, and our staff works hard at trying to understand what the other jurisdictions' needs are. Does that answer your question?
Is there an opportunity to have a coordinating overall board, voluntary?
Is there an opportunity to have a coordinating overall board? I would say each board would probably not yield to that, but my sense is they do work together. So our board works with the library board every year. Our board works with well, I shouldn't say that. Our staff, is more correctly said, our staff works with their staff, and their staff, and the same with the Park District. You just saw District 34 with that stormwater. They had to provide the land. A few years back, the Park District said, here, we're going to rebuild our golf course, and yes, you can store some stormwater here, a lot of acre feet. I don't remember how many, Jeff, how many? So there were a lot of acre feet that were stored there temporarily. So there is an ongoing concerted effort to do that, and it really needs to happen at the staff level more than anything else, because that's who lives and breathes it every day.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Robin.
I just want to make an announcement along the lines of the community events that Jim was talking about. The Village of Glenview Natural Resource Commission twice a year has a river cleanup day. You saw 25% of our village is open space. Between the Park District and the village, there are many citizens and high school students and others who take great joy in caring for that land. So this Sunday on Friday, in the fall we do it on a Sunday, from 9 to 12, we'll be over at Techney Basin near Coles. And it's a great event for kids, adults, grandchildren, and look for it in the spring too. The Chicago River, which runs through the middle of our town, is a terrific amenity which Glenview takes pride in.
Henrietta Saunders is the chairman of our Natural Resource Commission, in case you weren't sure. Thank you, Henrietta. Yes, ma'am.
Jim, you commented on how much the freight traffic has increased on our commuter line, and we've seen that increase so much over the last few years. Do we know why that is? It used to be a commuter line. Do you know why there's so much freight traffic on there now in recent years? Thank you.
Do you want to answer that? Do you know? This is Jeff Brady, our Director of Development, and he knows more about it than I do.
So with freight traffic, in particular on the Metro and the Amtrak line, it's actually shared. So for instance, if you would look at the slide again, there's a certain portion of the tracks that are owned by Metro, but the remaining portion of the tracks are actually owned by Canadian Pacific. So they're primarily freight train tracks, and they're used by the commuter rail system through the Chicagoland area. What's basically happening is you're seeing there's 4 major railroads throughout the United States, and they all converge into Chicago. All of them have their major freight yards in Chicago. So primarily freight is the major commodity that goes along those railroad tracks, and the commuter lines, or the commuter facilities, each of Amtrak and also Metra, they're using those same railroad tracks. So that's why you're having the mix of the freight and the passenger rail. And ultimately, the reason that there's a lot more commerce along those lines is you're seeing a lot more of the intermodal traffic. So anything that's delivered by Amazon, it's coming from the coast, coming into the Chicago area, and then getting redistributed around. So that's an example of what's happening in the area.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, ma'am.
I'd just like to thank the city or the village for being proactive and really taking a stand to support residents regarding the freight traffic and what's happening there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was at
that meeting in Bannockburn
Mhm.
last month about the rail traffic.
Jeff was there.
I got the impression it was they were really gung-ho on this and that we were gonna end up getting these rolling tracks. Is there anything we can do as a village that you would suggest to try to fight back? And if it does go through, is there any kind of economic impact for the village of Glenview?
One of the things to know about the FRA is the Federal Railroad Administration. They have significant say in what happens. So it's not an easy thing to challenge them as a function of, it goes back to trying to establish right-of-way and what they were trying to do to get to establish the railroad, because so much of the country was built around the railroad. Actually, if you, the beginning of the 100-year anniversary of the Bear started out with much of Glenview came to be because of the railroad. So there's pros and cons to all these things, and there is no simple do this or we would have done it. I would encourage you to write your congressman, and it's probably more federal than state. I mean, I think state has a little bit of weight, but I don't want to take it away from them. But in reality, I would tell you that it is a federal railroad, and so that's where. Ann?
There's language in the comprehensive plan about affordable housing, and I wondered if you could just speak in a general way about our village's orientation to that issue.
So the language in the comprehensive plan about affordable housing and what is the village's orientation to that. So there are a couple of different theories on this. So there is this brand new site, not new, but newly available, which is Be Best Hardware. And so on one hand, that's going to be very expensive real estate. And on the other hand, people would say, well, that's the newest development, you should do something there. So affordable housing, which is defined as trying to make housing more affordable for seniors or for other workers or people who just don't have the means. How do we decide who gets it? That's part of it. And how do you decide who pays the bill? And in reality, the community as a whole would be paying the bill to whatever we do. We probably, so they changed, a couple of years back, we were at about 10%. And then they reevaluated us and we fell down to about 7%. And I don't know if that was because we built out the Glen or because we built out various other things around town. But I would tell you they are, the thought is not necessarily going the same direction. So on one hand, you have a community that works hard to raise their standard of living and to they want us to be responsible and to do all these things. And on the other hand, you have a group that says, how do we provide more housing that is affordable? And let's say, you probably know what Sunset Village is, which is manufactured homes on Waukegan Road. And they had a significant issue. They had an issue that their water was groundwater. The water table was dropping. There was radon, there were boil orders. They had more boil orders than anything else, and they couldn't get enough, they didn't even have enough water pressure to put out a fire. Not only that, their density got greater and greater. They just kept putting more manufactured homes in there. And at that point in time, these fell under the county. They did not come under the village. We didn't have control of it. And so we put pressure on the county, and the county basically backed away and said, it's yours, you guys fix it. And so we said, you will put in potable water, you will reduce, and then they went bankrupt. And so then it was sold to someone else who agreed to put in the water. And at the exact same time, they were required to reduce the number of units. And the reason for reducing the units was to make sure that a fire truck could get down the street, right? There was one that burnt, and the guy next door burnt as well because It was so close. So these are real things that really happened a number of years back. And so the object is, how do we fix that? There was a group that said, we, the village, should underwrite a couple of $1 million to pay for the water. And the board and staff said, wait a minute, this is privately owned. We're not giving someone $1 million. So the group that wanted us to give them the money said, well, if they put that money in, it's going to raise the rent. So you have a couple of different things that are working at odds to each other. They deserve potable water, put out a fire and drink from the faucet and do all these things, but there's a true cost to that. And we're going to force you to take out units, and there's just a higher cost associated with that. So what makes the cost of Glenview so much money? One of the things is, back to my very beginning, which is the value of our education. So the value of our education drives up the cost of our land. The value of our education is significant to your tax bill, and the value of our education is what makes it a bit more expensive for others that want to come here. It also makes it more attractive. So it's kind of like, what should we do, and how much should we give away? Special appropriations was a slide in the very beginning. There were two primary groups that got the money. One of them is youth services, and one of them is senior services. And so we're trying to say we want to help the youth and protect them and give them, there's something called diversion. So if you do something bad, you're a bad actor as a kid, and you're 16, you do something stupid, what do you want them to do? Do you really want to put it on that kid's record? Or do you want to give them community service? Or do you want to give them some other method? And so our community is trying to say, we don't want to ruin the kid's life. We want to do what we can to help him. At the exact same time, on the senior side, we're trying to work with them, and we actually have something called angel grants, and we have some of these other things that say that senior really can't afford to live there. And we have some housing over on Depot and some other things that have constrained increases in the amount that it can go up in value. So we're trying to address affordable in different ways, but we're not going to just say, here's a new place, it costs really cheap, and who's going to get it? That's not manageable, and it's not realistic. So it is an ongoing discussion that does not have a succinct answer, that is probably not what you're looking for, but it is on the agenda. It is a consideration. We have some board members that feel, I believe every one of them has some empathy in their heart for it, but they're trying to figure out who should pay it at what price and where do we put it. And we do not want to name an area of town because that doesn't really work well for anybody. So it's kind of like, how do we integrate this in a way that is manageable? Does that help you at all? Was there another question? Yes, sir.
Hi there. I'm from Congressman Schakowsky's office, and someone from Mr. Schneider's office is here too.
Okay.
It is the FRA that has a lot of sway in this rail discussion, but we are working as much as we can to try and send letters and pressure them to at least make sure that there's one of the steps required to make sure that they consider the environmental and the harmful impacts that could result. So we're working on it. It's just, I don't know if we're going to win in the end. We're going to try.
And if anybody wants to talk to our office or Congressman Schneider's office, we're here afterwards.
Yeah.
Congressman Schakowsky and Congressman Schneider, representatives, staff are here for both of them. Yes, sir.
I have more of a comment, and I just wanted to say thank you very much to the Village of Glenview, especially Jeff Brady and Don Owen, about being out in front of this whole issue of the railroad Hiawatha project.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, a group of residents in my neighborhood, Princeton Village, who have been meeting very regularly on this railroad situation, have joined forces with some people up in Lake Forest because they don't have the backing of their village board up there. They have the Metro president who lives in Lake Forest who wants this built, and also, they also are interested in having an Amtrak stop. So anyone that wants to join our volunteer group who is working with the legislators, Laura Fine, we met with, and Dan Biss, and Jan Sikowski, who wants to join or help us out in our volunteer effort here to make our voices louder. I'll stay after and I'll gather your email addresses, and we'd appreciate all the help we can get.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Several years ago, they did a survey in Glenview where safety was cited as the second most important concern for the community.
Mm-hmm. Safety is a priority.
Yes. Currently, in Springfield, they will be voting on Bill 1657, the gun dealer licensing bill.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, there was an effort to ask our community to send a letter to the governor asking him to support such legislation, which would impact our community because guns do not have borders. They go wherever people can carry them. So, since this stands a chance of passing, at this time, would the village board be willing to send a letter to the governor asking him to please sign that bill if it passes desk?
You've asked this question before,
Yes.
and the village board has carefully managed their way through avoiding almost every issue that I would consider a social issue. And as a function, there are people that we have in this community that believe on both sides of whatever these issues are. And there are multiple issues that you have brought to my attention. And each of them is a very divisive issue that really does not have much to do with our core services. And so I come back to our core services, which are police and fire, which are water and streets and those things. And beyond that, we don't really have a voice in Springfield. We do work to go to Springfield when it is something that has to do with our finances and something to do with the things that actually drive us from how do we get our projects done and what we have the concerns about. But so no, we have not addressed something like that because I can probably hear from as many people that would be opposed to our doing that as there are that would be in favor of our doing that. Are there any other questions? If not, yes, ma'am.
I heard that you guys might possibly be getting rid of the station, downtown station, Amtrak Metro Station. Is that true or no?
So our Amtrak station today is downtown. There has been a request to move we have requested from various jurisdictions to move our Amtrak station to the Glen, to the North Station. And the reason we asked to do that is sometimes when an Amtrak train is sitting in the downtown, it can block the intersection for an extended period of time. So the object is to move it there. At the exact same time, as you heard a few minutes ago, Lake Forest would like to have an Amtrak station. And so I think there's a question of, will there be both stations if they were to get one, or would they move Glenview to Northbrook? And I don't know the answer because we don't own those decisions. I have not heard anything about moving it other than moving it from our downtown to the North Glen. I don't know if there's any consideration for taking it away from Glenview and moving it to Lake Forest. I just know that that Lake Forest has been requesting it for a number of years. So, if not, I thank you all for coming this morning, and it's always nice to be here each year. So thank you all for being here and for paying attention to the village. This is Megan Kearney from the Chamber, who just has a couple of closing remarks.
Thank you, Jim.
I just want to thank everyone for being here today. We want to thank the library for hosting and the Glenview Grind for providing the coffee. We want to thank our co-hosts, the League of Women Voters, as well as Glenview Bank and Trust and Northview Bank and Trust. Thank you all again for being here. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you very much.